Anton, I think it's time for us to start.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Thank you all. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This is the first session of Game Drive this year, and we are very excited about it. Truly excited. All right. So what you're seeing right now is the first Game Drive online Ask Me Anything session. In a series of Game Drive educational sessions open to everyone, as you may see. As I've mentioned earlier, you can just share the link, which Phillip has kindly shared in the chat, and invite anyone to join us. This is an educational session, and of course, first and foremost, it's open for game developers, and we welcome pretty much everyone, irrespective of the team size, of the experience level. Everyone will most certainly find something useful for themselves today. So my name is Anton Gorodetsky, and I'm the head of industry relations at MY.GAMES, and I will be your host today, and hopefully not only today, but on the other sessions as well. Once again, MY.GAMES is super thrilled to introduce the third season of Game Drive. This is a business accelerator program for mobile game developers, which we launched back in 2020 with Google. And although the first two seasons we've been doing that with, again, Google, this year, the program is also powered by other amazing partners apart from Google, which is Amazon Web Services for Games, data.ai, and of course, Deconstructor Fun. And altogether, MY.GAMES and partners, we've prepared a great program for this season hopefully in a way that is extremely beneficial and practical, for game developers. Also, this season, for the first time ever, we present the hybrid format. We will be holding both online, as we did in 2020 and 2021, as well as offline educational and networking events throughout the whole year, throughout 2023. And so the first offline event will happen, I'm sure that you have seen it in the newsletters or in the social media, but once again, the first offline event will happen on May 23rd during the Nordic Game Conference in Malmö. So if you're planning to be there, if you were about to go to Sweden for the conference, please register for this event on the Game Drive website. So if you guys could share the link for the website in the chat, that would be great, just in case someone misses that. And so we would be happy to see you there. And of course, do not forget the whole point of the accelerator program. So please submit your game for review to the Game Drive partners and get a unique chance to receive an exclusive one-on-one feedback session and investment opportunity from MY.GAMES venture capital team. So once again, everything can be done at the Game Drive website. Please submit your project, please register for the events. Everything can be done there. A couple of technical details before we move on. So we are having some speaker sessions, and the whole session will take approximately 60 minutes today. And then after that, we'll have a 40-minute Q&A session with you guys and the experts. So please prepare your questions. Don't not hesitate to ask them by using the Q&A chat option. You may see it below in the Zoom window. So do not once again hesitate to ask your questions. We'll carefully gather them and try to answer every question today, every question that we have. Now that we've done with all the technicalities and with the announcements, let's get to this particular session of today. And so we'll talk about mobile gaming and audience trends, like a more general topic. We will discuss 2023 trends and 2022 takeaways and how to adapt to the ever-changing landscape of the gaming industry, and most certainly the mobile gaming industry, which is very dynamic, as you all know. We have several quite interesting speakers today who will definitely share some exclusive insights, and we are particularly very proud about the about the experts that we have managed to gather here. So you may all see them on your screens right now. And oh, hello. Make sure that you get all that these guys are ready to share with you. So please remember that we're also here to talk to you, not only like share insights. So please, again, do not hesitate to bring your questions and send them to the chat, to the Q&A chat. That would be most helpful, meaning that we will not miss them. All right, time for the speakers. Let me just give you a quick intro. As you may see, today we have Nick Matsokin, who is the MY.GAMES Venture Capital Executive Director. You might remember this amazing guy from earlier seasons of Game Drive. He used to be there as well, and he is with us again here today. Hi, Nick.
Hey, everyone. Hi, Anton. Great to be here with you guys.
All right. We also have Dima Illinov, who is the Senior Account Executive at data.ai. Dima, a pleasure to have you here, and pleasure to have you guys as experts and as partners of the project.
The pleasure is mine. Thanks for inviting.
Nice. The amazing Daria Iakobleva from Google, who is analytical consultant at Google, obviously. So Daria, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being here. Looking forward to your pod as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Nice. And the last, but definitely not the least, is the amazing and the funniest person in the room, I would say. Phillip Black of Deconstructor of Fun and Game Economist podcast. And not only podcast, like literally of everything, the social media, the LinkedIn, the pod, the newsletters, everything. Phillip, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. So thank you for joining us, and looking forward to the wisdom that you're gonna spill today.
Thanks for having me. I'm coming at you from Canada. I used to think that Swedish pizza is the thing I don't trust. It's now been bumped for Canadian pizza. Just if you go to the on-site conference, just Swedish pizza, you want to avoid that all costs.
Thank you for that. Yesterday I actually learned that Malmö is not like a safe city to be there, which is kind of surprising, not in the good way. So
the banana pizza doesn't help.
Yeah, one of the dangers. All right, thank you guys so much again for joining us, both to the experts and to the viewers. And this has been more than enough from me, so I'm just passing the word to Nick now. He's gonna probably make a beautiful speech right now, hopefully. Nick?
Yeah, sure thing. Let's do this. So yeah, hello everyone. My name is Nick, and I'm happy to welcome all of you to our first event, Game Drive third season. Before we make a deep dive into the state of the market, mobile trends, I will introduce the third season of Game Drive and share more details about it. So Game Drive is hosted by MY.GAMES, along with our dear partners. MY.GAMES is a leading European free-to-play games developer and publisher headquartered in Amsterdam. We are a team of seasoned industry professionals with decades of experience and diverse range of games in operations. So MY.GAMES creates titles for all platforms. We have more than 70 games in our portfolio, and you may definitely know us for such remarkable games, or I would say hit games, like War Robots, Hustle Castle, Rush Royale, Left to Survive, and Warface. Next slide, please. At MY.GAMES, we contribute to the games industry evolution with a series of projects and events that are dedicated to the global game developer community. And Game Drive is really our key program. We launched Game Drive back in 2020 with Google, just like Anton has mentioned, with a mission to provide independent development studios with the best advice, knowledge, and expertise to set their games up for success. For MY.GAMES, it's also an opportunity to meet new studios and join them as a strategic partner and investor. For the Game Drive's third season, we are very excited to join forces with key industry leaders, Google, Amazon Web Services for Games, data.ai, and Deconstructor of Fun. And I'm very sure that these folks would deliver very interesting and exciting insights on the market, on the industry trends today, and furthermore in the course of Game Drive. We have expanded our Business Accelerator program this year, preparing events and content exactly for needs of mobile game developers today. We know all the challenges and the market is quite tough. So yeah, we encourage all studios to take part in Game Drive, submit your games on our website and receive game evaluation, key product metrics analysis, tailored genre and competitive review, recommendations on product improvements, advice on marketing and scaling your games globally, and all this done by experts at MY.GAMES, Google, AWS, data.ai, and Deconstructor of Fun. Can we move to the next slide, please, Anton? Perfect. Yeah, so as you may know, Game Drive is around on the market for a while. Game Drive in its previous season was really well received by the game developers community, as you may see on this slide. Also, one of the studios that made it to Game Drive finals has received investment by MY.GAMES Venture Capital. MY.GAMES Venture Capital is an investment division of MY.GAMES. And the idea behind strategic partnerships that we make is to help talented development teams make hit games by providing all-inclusive support in user acquisition and marketing financing, game design, infrastructure solutions, and much more. So now MY.GAMES Venture Capital is a team of dedicated experts and a community of more than 25 studios that we have joined as investors. Since 2017, we have consolidated 8 studios. Now they are part of MY.GAMES family. We're excited to support independent development studios with all resources, investment, much more, to deliver more games, more successful hit games in a partnership. All right, can we shift to the next slide, please? Yeah, so with MY.GAMES Venture Capital, funding and investment is truly the beginning of the benefits that we bring to the table of strategic partnerships, as you may see on this slide. Next one, please. All right. So the pandemics are now officially over. We have lived through this, and congrats everyone. And this year, we present the hybrid format of Game Drive that includes a series of online and offline educational and networking events. Game submissions on our website will be open all year. Offline, events tailored to key European conferences with keynotes, panel discussions, one-on-one sessions with experts, networking with fellow development teams, and more. And the first one is coming tailored to Nordic Games Conference later this month. Online, educational sessions with top industry leaders, roundtables, Ask Me Anything sessions on actual topics and case studies. So once again, submit your projects and get an opportunity to participate in invite-only executive offline networking events, receiving exclusive one-on-one expert sessions with event partners, and full project evaluation and recommendations by MY.GAMES and Google. Studios with the most promising games will also have an opportunity to receive investment from MY.GAMES Venture Capital. So we encourage you to provide as much information as possible about your games so we could better evaluate it and reach out to you with our support, advice, and potentially funding opportunities. Now taking a chance to introduce the upcoming events of Game Drive in a little bit more of a detail. So our first offline event will happen on 23rd of May during the Nordic Games Conference in Malmö, Sweden. So if you plan to visit Nordic Games, register for the Game Drive event on our website and join us. Next one, please. Next online Ask Me Anything session will be held on June 15th, and we will talk about all things live operations and player engagement. We'll cover the topics of event schedules, offer systems, content production pipelines. So register on the Game Drive website and join us. That's it from my side. And yeah, let's rock Game Drive this year.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much. Someone else is sharing the screen just in case, so please don't punch me in the face for being late with the slides. Yeah. All right. Nick has covered it pretty neat. Thank you again so much. And I guess everyone has learned all the major things that we are trying to do with Game Drive this year. And now please welcome, as promised, Dima Illinov from data.ai, who will talk about the state of gaming. And you can definitely trust this guy since he works at data.ai, and pretty much the whole market uses data.ai. So you know the data is good. All right, Dima, the floor is yours.
Thanks for the warm welcome, Anton, and thanks, Nick. So we're pleased to participate in Game Drive this year as an insights partner. And we're the ones who are estimating the mobile market, trying to help you navigate the competition, make the right bets when it comes to launching your new games. And yeah, so this is the introduction session, one of several this year. And there's no better way of starting this but actually looking at what's going on in the mobile ecosystem before we deep dive into the game design and the gaming market. And I'll be your host today from data.ai. Yeah, so speaking of macros, let's just talk overarching trends that we see in the past several years. Because gaming market has been affected heavily by the COVID. There was an influx of new players, but now the critical question is, from the engagement perspective and from the overall screen time, do we see that this consumption persists for any kind of entertainment content being consumed on the mobile? And luckily, this is what we see. So we're looking at the past 3 years right now, first quarter of this year versus previous year versus the year before. And as you know, 2021 was already off the peak from the COVID lockdowns. And this is where the engagement already jumped significantly across the board in all the countries. But the good thing is that for the largest market out there, we almost crossed like 5 hours of screen time. And that engagement persists. So this is good for any kind of mobile entertainment and media. And as we'll see later in the presentation, our feeling is that there is a conversion between different types of being entertained, whether it's games or like entertainment apps or short video or others. And that obviously affects the mobile gaming market, because the more screen time you have, the more potentially playtime you might have for any kind of mobile games. Now, speaking of the impact, we see that more people spend more time in front of their screens, but is that affecting the volume of new user acquisition over the last several years? And what happens with the consumer spend? Because some of them, you might have heard that last year, like versus the year before, was a bit of a dip when it comes to consumer spend. But we have to put this picture into perspective. And the way I look at it is the following. So we're looking at the long-term trends starting 2019. And as you can see, from both downloads and consumer spend perspective, we're talking about the massive growth. So basically, we entered the new normal when the first lockdowns hit, and then this consumption patterns preserves. So more people downloading more apps on average. And as you might imagine, downloads growth is not related to just the device population growth. It hasn't exploded that much. It's just like the attention span gets shorter and people download more apps in general. That's why for any new entrant on the market, there's always a room for growth. Whether you're launching like a casual or core game, there's always a chance and a higher propensity to download something new and try out new things and experiment. for any kind of consumer globally. The same with consumer spend. And although it's been affected, I would say last year more than the year before by privacy changes that we all observed in the performance marketing and mobile user acquisition. And that resulted in a bit of a dip when it comes to consumer spend. But all in all, we observe is like almost 30 billion plus per year compared to 2019, which is a staggering number. So mobile gaming market is at its prime. So it's bigger than anything else, and it's bigger than it ever been, like almost like last year was a bit higher on the consumer side, but still the numbers are quite striking. So this is the right year to launch anything, to scale, to try out. Although we will look at later in the presentation, the markets gets more consolidated, and this is, I think, what raises the bar higher when it comes to the game quality and the user acquisition. And this is where you potentially need a strong partnerships with platforms and publishers, and this is what hopefully this accelerator will bring to the table. Just elevate your expertise as a potential studio launching new games in partnership with the industry kind of practitioners and those who already did this in the past and succeeded massively. So that said, if you look at the long-term trend, now looking at the not 3 but 4 years versus kind of peak of the pandemic, first quarter of 2020, we see almost 30% growth in the consumer spend, which is staggering. And that's, we cannot just ignore this growth. So don't be upset by the 2022 versus the year before. Just look at the long-term perspective and you see that the opportunity is as good as it has ever been, right? Now, looking at the platform development separately, so we're looking at the iOS versus Google Play numbers on the volume of downloads per quarter over the last 4 years, consumer spend, and total hours. Just to sum up what I was talking previously, because this slide has a bit of a twist when it comes to where the growth is coming from. And on the download side, it's pretty evident that the bulk of the downloads come from Google Play. So iOS is quite stable market. As you can see, there's not growing massively when it comes to number of downloads. The numbers are quite steady. They haven't increased much. Increased a little bit in the first lockdowns, but then it was pretty much stable market. And then Google Play is where the growth happens, actually. On the consumer spend is a bit of a different picture. And on this graph, you'd see the impact of where the budgets get readjusted in the middle of 2021. Following the IDFA deprecation, there were more user acquisition run on Google Play. You see spikes of downloads on Google Play and simultaneously spikes of consumer spend on Google Play as well. But then again, market stabilized and iOS has a pretty much stable share with the Google Play. And on the total hours, obviously there's a huge spike when the first lockdowns hit globally, but then there was a period of recovery and uncertainty, but now I think we're entering yet another new normal. So we are almost the same level as peak of the pandemic, and this is what corresponds with the previously showed slide when it was like 5 hours per user per day in all mature markets. Interesting thing is to compare the consumer spend in mobile games versus other ways of entertainment and correlate that with the overall situation in the economy, because consumer spend in some parts of the world does correlate with the overall disposable income. And funny enough, what we see if you look at, say, Germany or France, comparing the disposable income trend, as you can see, it's trending down, starting early, or middle of last 2021, basically. Like the COVID hit hard on the economy. There's just no questions here, and it correlates strongly with a bit of a dip on the spend for mobile games. But that said, people don't stop spending altogether. They just spend differently. So, and this is where we see the in-app purchase spend in apps, like entertainment apps, is actually not necessarily following the dip on the mobile games. And that raises a question, because we're seeing some anecdotal examples of when TikTok, for example, last year or like a few years ago, introduced IP and ways to pay the inside the app, and now it's top grossing app globally. Is TikTok competing with other ways of entertainment, not only for the time spent, but in terms of the wallet share as well? That's an interesting question that we don't have an answer for, but the numbers tell us that its popularity is basically consuming not only time spent, which is not a novelty, has been growing significantly over the past like 3 or 5 years, but now it's consuming even the wallet share. So people find ways to get entertained, and gaming is just only one way of doing this. But entertainment apps are competing for the wallet share for mobile games. So these are the core kind of a macro trends that we need to take into account whilst looking at the mobile gaming market. Now let's dive a bit deeper on the mobile gaming side of things. And again, this is more of an overview slide just to paint a picture of like what kind of what to expect when it comes to distribution for your mobile games and where you would expect consumers to be spending and paying for your apps. So visually, we put side by side the biggest markets by the number of downloads and whether the same markets are any significant when it comes to consumer spend. And you have a very clear visual representation of how consolidated the market is on the consumer spend. So you're looking at in blue, you would see the tier 1 Western markets, leading obviously by US, which has a parity when it comes to device population on the download side, but the spend is shifted still towards the iOS. And you have other like much smaller tier 1 and tier 2 Western markets like global, like the biggest European countries, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. And on the flip side, you would see Eastern side of things represented by China, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. So yeah, because if you're planning for launching anything, you have to plan your user acquisition and predict your demand, and this is the picture that you might use for planning actually, where you expect those growth to happen. And depending on the setting and the targeting for a game, you might target one market or the other. Now looking at the buckets of growth and which countries grew the most when it comes to the distribution as measured by the new downloads from the stores or consumer spend. And as you can see, despite everything, despite IDFA, privacy, the United States versus like 2019 is growing significantly. And one reason for that is just basically it's the focus point for a lot of developers, because if you build something for a Western market, where else would you acquire users and expect to grow like other than the US? So it's just the chicken and egg situation. So more people are focused on the US market. That's why it's so significant, although it's very saturated and concentrated, as we will see later in the presentation. And on the flip side, India has exploded in the number of devices and in the consumer demand for any kind of mobile applications or games. As you can see, the growth numbers has been significant like for the past 5 years, but in the last several years it has just grown through the roof significantly. The same true for other so-called like developing markets like Southeast Asia or like Turkey, even some countries in the Middle East like Egypt or others. And if we try to balance this picture in the number of device population, just to show apple-to-apple comparison of like per device, what is the buying power that represents the spending patterns. You can notice that there are significant outliers that you can take into consideration, like Japan or South Korea, where gaming is a culture, and that's why they like per device, per user, they spend much more. However, the trends, those macro trends are affecting even those markets as well. Take Japan as an example. So Japan has decelerated quite significantly, especially on the consumer side, and now it's almost equal to South Korea, while previously it was ahead of any other market globally on the per device spend. And Japan is a very consolidated market. It's like a winner takes it all. So there's only a handful of titles competing, but those who are heavy hitters, and they're optimized for local markets. And interestingly, you'd find the consumer spend in some Western markets to be quite similar. For example, the volume of the market for Australia and the US is very different, obviously, but the per device spend is quite close. And Australia hasn't dropped that significantly year over year versus US, for example. And this is where you can find those like kind of opportunities for you to grow and expand if you're targeting one platform or the other. The same picture from a different angle would be comparing consumer spend inside the country between years. And this is where you can see, for example, the impact on the implementing third-party payments in South Korea. So year over year and versus 2022, you see the drop in the consumer spend in South Korean stores. Whilst on the iOS it may not be that significant. And this is just to close the loop on the country trends. And finally, when we're talking about the market consolidation, and I have a few more slides just to show you on the subgenre level, we're talking about the $1 billion club, so-called. And this is an interesting picture. So how many apps are surpassing certain threshold when it comes to consumer spend? And as you can see, the number, overall, there was more and more room for more and more titles to be successful. And as you can see, there was a steady growth in every bucket, more or less. 10 million, 100 million mark, and 1 billion mark. However, since this privacy changes has been implemented, I think those hit the top earners much more than they did for like the smaller publishers, small game studios. As you can see, that the billing club has shrunk as a result of this, changes to the privacy and the complexity of the user acquisition, targeting whales and other things. Now looking at the genre trends, and we're happy to support you throughout this accelerator program with some kind of bespoke analysis for those who are willing to get some competitive intelligence. But this is the kind of the target for you, and the picture to keep in mind when aiming for launch. What is the volume breakdown between certain genres? And for this analysis, I took United States as one country for two reasons. A, because it has a parity between iOS and Google Play in the terms of device population, and B, is the largest Western market, probably the one that you're going to be targeting, launching from this part of the world. And from the consumer spend, the market is quite consolidated. It's the bulk of the spend, more than half, is represented by casino, match, and strategy games, on top of some RPG and simulation. On the distribution end, on the download side of things, hyper-casual has been a phenomenon for the past many years, and it still is a legitimate source of quality traffic for in-app purchase-driven games, and it's still like a vehicle that drives a lot of user acquisition on the market, and it accounts for almost like a third of the downloads globally, and even for the US. The situation is even more significant if we're looking at the developing markets, but even the wealthiest market out there are subject to like third of the downloads coming from hyper casual, so that's still there. And then there are interesting trends when it comes to consumer preferences in the latest years. So we're looking at the chart showing the top breaking subgenres and top breaking projects in the US alone. Okay, so on the download side, there's been quite a few interesting launches last year. So Wordle and word-related games in general picked up a lot last year, and as you can see, it's basically topping the chart when it comes to downloads in the US, followed by some interesting launches like Survivor.io. On the consumers side of things, we see a trend that creative sandbox apps are growing in the number of people playing, but the consumer spend has a bit of a dip last year versus the previous year. It's an interesting fact. So basically, the more people are playing Roblox and other like creative sandbox type of games, but on average they spend less last year versus the previous year, although the engagement is record high. So more users, more time spent, more screen time, but less spent. So that was about Roblox as well. And speaking of market concentration, and I'm happy to take this exercise offline with those who enter the accelerator program. But this is another angle that you might use for your market analysis when planning for launch. Where's actually the room for you to grow? And if we look at the genre level, there's a disproportionate market concentration. Starting from the left side of the picture, we're looking at the Google Play. And as you can see, there's most popular genres by number of downloads to the least popular, which has the least volume. And the big gray area over here represents the rest of the market. So those downloads coming not from top 3, not from top 20, but all other publishers or studios or projects out there. And it's quite naturally that anything is hyper casual and new. So by default, it's skewed towards like newcomers. There are no old hyper casual games because they get old pretty fast, and the lifespan is much shorter than the rest of the market. But if you're aimed to launch something that has in-app purchase monetization, then the level of competition is very different. So, and I would recommend taking this picture into account. And another angle that you can use for this analysis is looking at the vintage year, so to say. So how many of the new games represent what part of the downloads or what part of the consumer spend? And this is where this picture gets interesting. That by downloads, you would expect like new games to be generating more downloads. That's just given, especially if you're talking about the long, those who has long playing cycles, right? So you get user acquisition phase at the beginning, and then you get a more stable audience that you can monetize throughout. So from downloads perspective, this picture looks very balanced. But if you look from the consumer spend perspective, this is where you see the difference. So the level of it takes time to build a decent game that monetizes nicely through in-app purchase, right? This is where you see the left part of this graph, top 3 games or top 20 games representing the bulk of the consumer spend. For example, in MY.GAMES, only like 23% of the titles are represented by anything from top 20 to infinity, right? So it's dominated by pretty much old titles. And this is what you can see over here. So this is the consumer spend chart, and as you can see, the big black bar over here represents the dominating old titles, and you can see and you can recognize them by name. However, on the subgenre level, you might find inside Match some unique opportunities. Like, for example, you're not necessarily aiming for Match 3 with some meta gameplay, but you might be targeting something like Connect Tiles or some merge games that are much less competitive. And this is where exactly you can plan your gameplay, plan your features, and plan your maybe some hybrid mechanics from different genres that make the game successful. So I'm happy to support throughout this accelerator program, and this is the overview part from data.ai today. And that's it. I'll turn it to our colleagues from Google. To Daria, the floor is yours.
All right, Dima, thank you so much. This has been very insightful. I mean, the whole state of the market, as I've said earlier, straight from data AI. I mean, who's the better source, right? Again, thank you so much. And guys, please do not hesitate to ask your questions in the Q&A chat, in just the chat, whatever. This is the perfect opportunity for you to get replies from the amazing Google Data AI, Deconstructor, Fun, and MY.GAMES and MY.GAMES Venture Capital experts. Yeah, without further ado, let's talk about 2023 and what we should and can expect from it. So the floor is yours, Daria, please. Thank you.
Please to the previous slides. Yeah, I was speaking about the main insight from the previous year, because from our perspective, we think that it's important to make all these expectations about the current year on the base of the previous year and everything that was happening last year. And the main insight here is that the previous year was the first year ever where gaming industry declined. And the main insight here is this decline happened mainly due to the mobile, because it has the biggest share within global gaming revenue. And if we, for example, look at also data.ai insights, there are different estimations on what will be what will happen next within the next year. And previously, in the end of the last year, the estimation was that the whole gaming will shrink further in this year, and it will has a decline by 3%. But why is this happening? Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. I would like to speak about the reasons and all the expectations on the base of 4 pillars that put some pressure on gaming industry. We will speak about competitors, we will speak about subsidized products, about users and suppliers. And you might think that you already seen this framework somewhere. This is something that we have taken from Michael Porter 5 forces and used it to describe the whole things happening on gaming industry. And basically all of these 4 pillars are putting more and more pressure each year. And from the last year, we've seen that all these things made this blue ocean to red ocean. Can we go to the next slide? And to the next slide. Now we will speak all these 4 pillars one by one. And speaking about competition, it's really tough at the moment. It's really the thing is that big publishers prioritize mobile now. They are going to different mobile studios trying to acquire them, or they build really strong projects and try to enter new markets, or they try to launch any other strong partnerships, like, for example, Metal and NetEase this year announced that they would like to collaborate and build different build different projects next year, as well as we have lots of IPs coming to different entertainment spheres from gaming, such as, for example, very successful series based on Last of Us or Super Mario Bros. That already, I guess, they reached 1 billion in box office at the moment. So a lot of things happening in IPs, in big publishers, in also brands, and they are actively used at the moment within this really great competition. As for substitutes, to the next slide, please. Substitutes are all the things that users can use instead of gaming to entertain themselves. And what is interesting here, and what also Dima already mentioned within his insights from data.ai, we definitely see the growing spend on different apps, not gaming. And we can think of two types of these entertainment things that people focus on. This is COVID habits that became our everyday routine within these COVID times. This is, for example, mobile shopping. This is, for example, Netflix that already started to go to gaming area as well. And we also see here the return of some offline activities that came back with this ease of restrictions. For example, the travel is booming at the moment, and Airbnb and Booking.com had really good Q3 last year, that they have all-time high revenue. And at the same time, we have really good opportunity in dating at the moment, because they also have really great in-app growth and also growth in downloads. And switching to users. In users, we definitely see these big changes happening due to economic situation, because lots of consumers at the moment having this pressure in their pockets, and they say that they don't really have enough money, not even to spend on some things that bring them joy, but also to have something left on the end at the end of the month. For example, only 45% based on Deloitte data say that they have this money to save. And also these things happening with consumers is also very visible within gaming companies as well, even in the biggest one. For example, we have lots of layoffs even in Xbox or Unity software companies, and we also can see that lots of them highlight this pressure in app purchases and say that this is the time where we need to do something with this, because consumers will not change in some time because of this pressure. And now go to the suppliers. And suppliers in our view is everything that brings users to your projects, like different platforms or different publishers, or Google, Apple, anybody who will help you to acquire from different streams and users. And here we, of course, face this reduced supply of targeted users due to IDFA deprecation that already happened on iOS. And now only 45% of users give their consent to track themselves. And at the same time, we see that different partners using fingerprinting, which is not a really good long-term solution, because it's not really insufficient for it doesn't have insufficient user base, and it definitely privacy hostile. But at the same time, we see that lots of revenue, almost 70% of in-app revenue in gaming, is still coming from iOS. So lots of gaming publishers need to face this change. So having all these trends from 2022, let's speak about what we can do with this all this happening in, and there is finally the opportunity for growth, what to expect from the next year. And I guess we can go to all the pillars by one as well, starting with competition. And if you remember from the previous slide, no, we can go further, sorry. As from the previous part, you remember that lots of big publishers with big budgets come into mobile. So basically, it's the time to use your opportunity and to build your brand, to fight and face this competition. And why this also important now at the moment, because in response to different economic difficulties, consumers tend to prefer option to do less of something than to stop entirely something. And this is the insight that we collected from the previous economic tough times. And basically, that's why it's the time to become top of mind game for a player, and to become, for example, the best shooter game each time a player thinks of playing shooters. For example, we already have Airbnb, who already started to work with this approach, and they made it somehow very strict and very strong, because they preferred to build their brand and not to use performance almost at all. And now the aim is just to become the first brand that comes up in your mind when you think of travel. And they definitely see this opportunity and this earning surge that happened just right. They started to perform this Swift. Then we go to the substitutes. And we have here first things coming to the mind as crossplay. This is something that we would like to highlight as going not to mobile, but also to other platforms such as console and PCs, because we definitely seen this popularity of consoles during COVID times. And the main insight here is that the popularity is the same. Despite the fact that everybody returned to office, time spent on consoles remained the same. That's why it's a good opportunity to try to enter this market as well. And also lots of restrictions that came with console supply also are expected to ease, so that might also be an opportunity for consoles to grow. And as for PCs, lots of projects are coming PC already, such as Gardenscapes, Clash of Clans, something like this. They all try to, for example, become a web browser games, and they definitely see that it is working. One more insight here. Can we go to the next slide? About users. Starting from users, the first insight here is that we can enable new revenue streams from new markets, obviously. And the markets that we also see from our data and from third-party data are these Asian emerging markets that already also Dima mentioned within his presentation. We also see this really big growth of India, and we have an answer why is this happening, because the share of mobile traffic increases in this country, and the quality of mobile traffic is also improving within the last years, and not only, to be honest, years, but within different months, and it becomes better and better each month. And also at the moment, India has women underrepresented on the market, because they are not really have not only a smartphone, but also access to the internet with this smartphone. And it is going to be changed within this year, because the government will try to provide women these smartphones. So maybe it's also a good opportunity for casual games to enter this market. As for tier one countries, can we go back, please? There is a good opportunity in South Korea, because it always have been, and at the moment it also has really a good penetration within internet, and also smartphones, and also different types of consoles and PCs. And last but not least, also SIA region and Indonesia, the most developing within all the worldwide. And in Indonesia, in particular, also is a good opportunity to enter at the moment, because it's rapidly developing due to 5G developing. And now, yeah, thanks to the next slide. One more insight here about the users is hybrid monetization. And it became word of mouth within mobile gaming. And to be honest, now in mobile, each genre has several types of monetization, but it's also vital to think about it when speaking about PCs and consoles, because, For example, even Sony and Microsoft are thinking about adding ad revenue within their projects. And one interesting insight here about subscriptions, that gaming subscriptions are growing within last year and still growing this year, especially Netflix games. They released enormous amount of games, and I definitely see the really good outcome. As well as Google Play Pass that expands to different markets, especially to Indian market, for example, and also Microsoft's revenue subscription, which is mostly Xbox subscription. They this quarter they entered 1 billion revenue. This is also really enormous. And last but not least, here can we go to the suppliers? As we've spoken about the lack of targeted users, it's really time to try to increase traffic quality and try to embrace these privacy changes both in iOS and all the changes that is happening, that are going to happen within Android and also within web, because it's a new reality now. And despite the fact that everybody is trying to adopt in different ways. For example, just abandoning iOS and going to Android. This is not really sustainable, and this is just something that you need to accept and to start working with. And that's it from my side, from all the expectations. Can we go to the next slide just to sum up? Yeah, as for things that I'm going to happen this year, and the things that everybody we think will focus on within this year are brand awareness and building strong IPs, these cross-play features, and trying to enter different audiences within different segments of gaming, such as PCs. Also, Asian emerging markets are definitely will grow, and lots of partners, clients also are going at the moment to this market. We definitely see it. And working with different types of monetization is switching to hybrid monetization, using both purchases and ads, are also a really strong trend within, I guess, all the companies that we're looking at. And last but not least, very, very important, working with privacy changes will definitely make you have this competitive advantage among all the market. And that's it. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Daria, so much. This has been very, very good, very exciting and insightful. We even have some applause. I will add those as well. All right, guys. If you have missed anything, really do not worry. We're gonna host all the recordings on the Game Drive website after the session. So you will be able to rewatch it and check out every possible piece of data that you've missed. Once again, thank you, Daria, so much. And also, please do not hesitate to answer, to ask questions in the Q&A chat, guys. Really, the experts are here, apart from, presenting, they are here exactly to answer all of your questions. So, and hopefully every one of them will be answered. So do not be afraid and do not hesitate to do that. Finally, the person I'm very excited to, to see here, the amazing Phillip Black from Deconstructor of Fun, mostly, and Game Economist as well. And I definitely every one of you knows data.ai and Google, duh. But hopefully everyone knows Deconstructor of Fun and reads and listens to as well. So without further ado, Phillip, please enlighten us.
Thank you. I have some introduction stuff, but I decided to actually put at the end of the presentation. I hope that, if I can convince you that there's some interesting ideas here, maybe there's some other ways to connect. Maybe there's some other things that you may want to take a peek at that I'm working on. But the thing that's really taking up boy, it's taken up a lot of my time over the last couple months, is really this idea of a game thesis. And I'm really excited to talk about this one. But there's two things we're going to talk about in regards to the game thesis. So one is developing the model of a game thesis. What is it? What are the different parts? Why do you care about it? And then the second part of our talk, we're going to talk about how we can apply at least one part of this game thesis to get something really practical out of it, something that's related to some trends that are happening in the marketplace, but just a single trend, just one observation. And we'll see what we can do with that one single observation. So there's this word that's come up. It's come up a lot. I worked at EA Originals on the publishing side. So they're a particular part of Electronic Arts that does third-party publishing, usually working with small indie developers, sometimes mid-sized developers. And I've also worked at Amazon Game Studios, and I've spent a lot of time trying to sign games. And one of the things that I found in the last really 5 to 10 years is that it's becoming a lot harder to be a publisher. And it's becoming a lot harder to be a publisher because venture capital has arrived to games. This was something that wasn't happening, 10, 15 years ago. CCP in Ireland, the makers of EVE Online, got a check for $50 million from A16Z. Like, unbelievable. Like, that was never happening beforehand. And so venture capital has finally arrived to gaming. And not only has venture capital arrived to gaming, they've also brought a lot of how they think about the world to games. And to me, I think that's great. And one of the things that I think they brought is this whole idea of a thesis. And this has come up over and over again when you talk to VCs, or if you're a studio that's pitching to VCs, they're going to talk about what is their thesis. And so the word thesis comes from Greek. It means to put something forth. It is an idea. It is a proposition that you have about the world. And so if you have done a PhD, or you've at least suffered through someone else who's doing a PhD, the whole idea of a PhD revolves around your thesis. It is the idea that you are putting forth into the world that you're going to spend 5, maybe 10 years if you're really going to suffer on. What am I going to prove to the world? How am I going to contribute to the world of knowledge? And every VC has a thesis, and they have a thesis because they have to go out and raise money from people who have enormous bank accounts. And so they want to convince them of an idea that they have about the world. They want to convince them of their thesis. And so many games don't have thesis, right? So these theses for venture capital are usually set at a very broad level. So I think blockchain is going to be really big, or perhaps I think biotech is going to be really big. So they're set at these really high levels, and they go out and they raise capital against these really broad ideas. But I think theses are really useful. I think theses are a way that we can lay our ideas bare, and we can apply rigor and scrutiny to them. So I've been really thinking about how we can take this idea of a thesis that came from academia that venture capital has really captured and run with, and we could apply it on a more micro scale. That we can use this idea of a thesis to examine individual game ideas rather than just thinking about broad categories. So what is a game thesis? How do we get more practical? So I think yeah.
Phillip, I'm really sorry for interrupting you.
No worries.
Do you? It seems like the presentation is not changing. So
ooh,
I'm still seeing the I'm still seeing the title slide. So
SpaghettiOs.
Can you change it? Do you have the ability to change it? Are you changing it right now?
I am.
Then we have a problem.
How about this? Do you guys mind going back to screen share?
Yeah, we should probably do that. Please help us out.
Apologies, no worries.
There's obviously something wrong with the Zoom thing, because I was wondering why I was still seeing the title slide while you're obviously going some further.
I actually thought it's just a one-slider deck.
Man, I'm not quite there yet.
No, I've seen the deck before, and I kind of got the idea that we're not seeing the appropriate slide right now. So if anyone could help us out from the team, please, with that, or maybe just share instead of Phillip his deck as we've been doing before. That would be very helpful.
Just as a suggestion, maybe you can try to request remote control thing, because I think...
well, let me try that. We'll go back to that. This is where you have cool elevator music.
The one from the Death Star. You know, the Family Guy.
Okay, there we go. How
All
about
right,
this?
thank you so
Are
much.
we in a good place?
Yeah.
All right, cool beans.
Sorry, everyone.
This is all you missed was this this 6 characters word thesis. All right, so we got this thesis. We have venture capital. They're doing theses. They're doing it at genre level. We can do this at a micro level. We can apply this whole idea of a thesis. We can do it at a micro level. We can use the whole idea of a thesis. The world of academia has created this. We can apply it to games, and we can do so in a really practical way. So what does that look like? So on a practical level, I think there are 5 parts to a thesis. And so the first part of a thesis, I would argue, is this whole idea of what has the market told us. And so to me, you start any thesis with a very broad observation of what's going on in the market. And that's the next part of the talk that we'll discuss, is kind of what has the market told us? What is an interesting observation at a market level? So think of this as like the soil of which you're going to plant your ideas. So to me, the next part of a thesis is what is the opportunity. So you have your soil, you've made an observation about the market, you've made some very, very broad inquisition. And then the next thing you want to do is you say, okay, well, what is the opportunity? Now that we have this soil, what are the seeds that are best going to grow in that soil? Next thing you want to do is you want to kind of talk more about what that seed you're actually planting is. So how are you going to be the same, or how are you going to be different? A lot of different frameworks you can use to break this down in a more minute way. You know, one of the things I'm a huge fan of is this idea of the Sid Meier rule. So Sid Meier, obviously legendary game designer, came up with SimCity, and you know, one of his many, many accomplishments was SimCity. And he has this idea of, you know, a game, when you're thinking about a game, 33% of the game should be something old, 33% of the game should be something new, and 33% of the game should be something innovating. And so I want to kind of capture that whole idea of this 33, 33, 33 rule in part of your game thesis. So really describing, you know, how are you going to be the same? How are you going to be different than the titles that have come before? Next part, and I've added this as I've started to work with HD studios. So not just people that are on mobile, but also people that are working in more traditional PC games. This is something that they spend not as much time as they should be thinking about. And it's something that I've spent way more time working with studios on, which is, what is your main content pipelines? So a lot of the ways that you win in live service is that you just make more shit. Right? You just make more widgets. That's one way to win. You know, one of the things that we've all admired about Fortnite is they just make a lot of stuff. That's one way to win. You know, it's not always about quality. A lot of the times, if you can just consistently deliver content to players, you can win. And so you need to understand what your content pipelines are. So, you know, if we were thinking about a battle royale, maps are not a content pipeline. Battle royales really rarely release new maps. For some games, it's going to be characters. You know, if you look at something like Apex Legends, what are their main content pipelines? It's really characters. Like, that's the thing they spend a lot of time developing. And so they really need to understand at the game thesis level, when they're before they even started the project, well, you know, how long does it take to make a character? Is it going to be 3 months? Is it going to be 6 months? Because if that's your main content pipeline, you already need to start thinking about how you're going to optimize that content pipeline, how you're going to reduce the cost, and how you're going to increase the quantity. And the last part, and I group these things together, is clear monetization hooks. And again, I've done this working with the HD folk, particularly Western HD studios. They need to be thinking about what are they going to sell? And sometimes that's related to your main content pipelines. So Apex Legends, they do sell characters, but that isn't always the case. Sometimes your content pipeline is different than your monetization hooks. So let's take a look at like applying this thesis to a game that's already been released. And we can kind of think about how they might have come up with a game thesis for this game. And the game I want to kind of demo this with is Marvel Snap. So Marvel Snap has come out recently. It is from Second Dinner. It's, I think, captured a lot of our attention. And I think they went in with a pretty strong thesis about what they wanted to see in the world. And of course, we've had talks from Ben Brode, who is the game director over at Second Dinner. And I think a lot of what he's been saying has kind of affirmed how he's thought about these problems as at least been in some sort of a thesis framework. So again, we're going to have the structure. What has the market told us? What is the opportunity? How are we the same or different? What are the main content pipelines and clear monetization hooks? So here would be a thesis that we could come up with for Marvel Snap. Mobile, while the biggest market, lacks a mobile-first CCG. So card collector game. And no, Hearthstone does not count. Hearthstone is not a mobile-first CCG, by the way. It is 3 gigs to download. Localization packs are awful. They have no fatui. There is very few games that before Marvel Snap we could think of as true mobile-first CCGs. And of course, like mobile's the biggest market again. Like that is now this kind of like a lazy market observation, but still like that's pretty big soil when combined with the fact that mobile lacks a mobile-first CCG. And so how are they going to be the same or different? Well, they're going to optimize match length. He's talked extensively about this, trying to get it down to a mobile appropriate format. They're going to optimize UX. So again, they're going to be in portrait. They're not in landscape. They're in portrait. A lot of the buttons are very close to where your thumbs are. The animations, of course, are fantastic. The whole thing is just buttery smooth. They're going to add broad IP appeal, which is the Marvel genre. And when you combine all these things together, they're going to create the first mobile CCG. Main content pipelines, single ability and scalable 3D cards. So what is the main content pipeline in Marvel Snap? Obviously, it's cards. But if we were to break that down further, they only have single abilities. So in Marvel Snap, there are no multiple abilities on cards. There aren't things like instance or trap cards or any of those mechanics. It's very clear what the ability is. It's only one ability. And the other thing is that each card has this 3D effect when you level it up. It's very easy to copy and paste that 3D effect. So when you level up cards in a Marvel Snap, the logo will change a little bit. When you rotate the phone, it has a little bit of a 3D effect. Sometimes it sparkles. Very clear content pipeline, very easily to scale that. Control-C, Control-V. Beautiful, beautiful Ben Brode, beautiful second dinner that they got this done. And they've really executed on shipping new cards consistently. So monetization hooks, they're going to source the single ability and scalable 3D cards from their collection level systems. The other thing you don't see here is that they do a battle pass on a monthly basis. Pretty unbelievable. And so when they have this collection level system and they have this monthly battle pass, they're going to be able to monetize at a Clash Royale level. That's how you could think about Second Dinner creating a thesis on what they're going to go out and do with Marvel Snap. So let's take just like the single idea of this game thesis, this first part. What has the market told us? Well, what has the market told us? What is a single observation that we can use? What is a single kind of plot of soil that we could use to plant some more seeds? So the one I want to talk about today is one that I've been thinking about really over the last 2 weeks, which is dual stick has arrived in the West. And so what I mean by that is dual analog sticks on mobile on screen. And so you have this problem in 3D environments where generally you need to be able to move not only the character's feet, but also their head. And so that requires 2 analog sticks. So the problem on mobile is analog sticks are kind of awkward. When you have a controller, you have that tactile feedback. When you're on mobile, the icons actually have to be on the screen, but it becomes even worse when you have dual analog sticks on a mobile screen, which is that you not only want to have the ability to move a character and also to move their head, but the other thing you want to have the ability to do is to press buttons. You want to be able to shoot. And so if I'm in a first-person shooter, I need to be able to move my character's feet, I need to be able to move their head, and I need to be able to shoot. So now I've gone from having only my 2 thumbs to being able to have some other, I need to have some other finger somewhere to be able to press that button. And that's been a barrier that we've had for a really long time, is how do we solve that? Because it's not just enough to have the 2 analog sticks on screen. You got to actually have more buttons on screen, which means that your hands are going to be in these awkward positions. You don't have that with a controller, right? You have 2 thumbs on your analog sticks and you have your fingers on the back, which you can use for your triggers. Not the case on mobile. You don't have that extra button. So Paramount for navigating 3D space helps with immersion, of course, right? If you want to navigate in a 3D environment, you got to have these dual analog sticks. I would say it's also pretty good for simultaneous real-time play. That's really important. If you want to have dual analog sticks, it unlocks a lot of capabilities. And the other thing here is that when you have dual analog sticks, if we were able to execute on this, you can port HD experiences, right? Because almost all HD games are going to use dual analog sticks or have the idea that I'm navigating in a 3D space. So we actually tried this in the industry when we first got onto mobile, right? Everyone was just like taking HD games, old HD games, slapping on mobile. They're looking for an easy paycheck. This is from GTA 3. This is still available on the App Store. You can go download it. It's like $5. It did not sell well. This was not the revolution. Everyone kind of backed off of this, right? We started to say, okay, well, we need to make mobile first experiences. We need to actually take advantage of the platform, take advantage of how the screen is developed. And not only that, take advantage of how people are engaging with mobile. So they were playing it in different settings than you were in HD games. They were playing it on the train. They were playing it. I think one of the game designers I've worked with said people play mobile to fill the voids in their life. And I'm not talking about like an emotional void, but really like a void in terms of time. So when you think about when you're playing Candy Crush or when you're playing a match 3 game, or when you're playing Clash of Clans, you're waiting in the doctor's office. You're on a train, you're on a bus. It's really filling those points in your life where you have nothing else to do. And we're starting to think about, okay, well, how can we take advantage of the idea that you're filling these voids in your life, and how would we actually change the design of games? And that's really how free-to-play is developed, right? We have much shorter session times. We have different types of sessions. When you go into Clash of Clans, you can have a very quick session when you're collecting resources. When you're playing Marvel Snap, remember, it takes maybe 2 minutes to play a game. So we've really thought about, okay, we need to fit the games into how people are experiencing mobile in their lives. And that just did not work with just porting HD experiences. When you play an HD game, you're sitting down 60 minutes, maybe an hour. You're having much longer session times. So when we think about mobile today, that, like I said, the dual analog sticks have arrived. And when you start to look at how people are engaging with these dual analog sticks, and by the way, this is PUBG Mobile. This is top tier PUBG Mobile player. This is how they're playing. It's unbelievable. There's a ton of buttons on screen. They have multiple fingers. Watching players play at a high level is unbelievable. And these games have scaled. PUBG hasn't scaled quite as much in the West, but as we'll talk about, there's a lot of HD games or HD-like experiences with these dual sticks that have scaled in the West. But people are still using on-screen virtual buttons. Like, we did not add those trigger buttons I was talking about earlier with analog sticks. We've kind of kept the core design. We haven't actually changed a lot of the UX when it comes to why these games are successful. And I'll talk about why I think they've been successful despite the fact that we haven't really optimized any of the UX. I actually think there's a lot of stuff going on around kind of the core experience that has made this possible in the West. Okay, so what's going on? Why can we go to the claim, or how can we support the claim that dual stick has arrived in the West? Well, one is Roblox. We don't talk about it a ton, I would say, in the industry, just because it's something that we don't experience, and if we don't experience it, we don't tend to play a lot. But I'm going to hit you up with the fact that half of kids, and 50% of kids under 16 in the United States play Roblox. Half. I mean, that's unbelievable. And when you watch kids play Roblox, they play it with 2 sticks. Like, most games are dual stick experiences. So they're being raised on these sophisticated dual stick experiences. Like, if we go back, we look at PUBG, like, this is how people are playing a lot of Roblox experiences. They're playing it like this. They're playing it with all these buttons on screen. So kids are being raised, half of US kids are being raised on these dual stick experiences. Second thing we saw was Fortnite, right? When Fortnite came to mobile, I can't tell you how many of my HD developer friends immediately panned it. How the hell are you going to translate that to mobile? How are you going to control? You're not going to be competitive. I mean, the laundry list of complaints I saw from HD developers on why this would never work was endless, and they were all wrong. They were all wrong. Fortnite did gangbusters on mobile, made a shit ton of money. We know that from the Epic v Apple trial leaks, that Fortnite made a ton of money on mobile, and the UX was not that different. It was dual stick on screen. People were tapping to build things. It was unbelievable how people were experiencing Fortnite on mobile, but it was successful, and it worked in the West. And to me, the piece de resistance is Call of Duty Mobile. Like, this to me was the big signal that I was like, wow, this is really here. This is happening. And not only is it happening for younger generations, it's happening for teenagers as well. Call of Duty Mobile, insanely successful in the West. First-person shooter. I would argue one of the first-person shooters on mobile in the West to be successful, and it has dual analog sticks. Now, they did include autofire, so you can have your two thumbs on screen, and unlike the PUBG icon or a screenshot I had beforehand where you kind of have your index finger and you're clicking fire, the game will automatically fire when you've zoomed in on a target. But again, if you look at top tier players, they are not playing like that. They do not play with auto fire on. They play with the ability to have to press the fire button to be able to shoot. So we have kind of these three huge projects that have been massively successful in the West that have all incorporated dual analog sticks on screen. So the question is why? And again, I don't think you need to answer why when it comes to what has the market told us when you're developing your game thesis. It's just enough to know that there's a factoid out there, that there's the soil, and yet you can plant seeds on it. That to me is enough for a game thesis. But still, I think it's fun to explore why we think dual sticks have succeeded in the West. And so the first argument I would offer is that screens got bigger. They got a lot bigger. And not only did they get a lot bigger, the resolution got bigger too. So when you look at a screen, not only are you able to have more room for your thumbs. So remember, we're talking about those analog sticks. When you have your thumbs, they're literally on screen. So you're obscuring part of the view of the screen. So if your screen is bigger, you have more things that you can see. Your thumbs are wider apart and you can see more of the content in the center. But not only that, when you have a bigger screen resolution, your field of view is actually better too. So you can see farther in terms of distance, which is really important for shooters. You want to know if someone's going to shoot you 30, 50 meters away. So not only your screen's getting better, but resolution has gotten a lot better too. And the other thing is that mobile is the first platform for many people. Like we were talking about Roblox. They are trained on these mobile devices. They're trained to touch. When you look at how console evolved, when people are trained on controllers, it ends up just being their natural input. They just understand that when I give someone a controller, if they've played console games before, they understand what those dual analog sticks do. If you give a traditional Xbox or PlayStation controller to someone who doesn't play console games, the first thing that happens is that they're just super confused on what these dual analog sticks do. They don't have that natural connection of, oh, hey, this one controls the feet and this one controls the camera. But not only that, the way people are engaging in mobile games has kind of gone back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of HD experiences. They're having much longer session times. So they're sitting down in their homes, they're playing for 30 minutes, an hour. We're going back to these HD experiences. And you got to remember, if you're a kid, the mobile device is always available in your home. So, mom or dad might be on the PC, but the phone is always available. It's a personal device you have. Kids in Europe, in the United States, in Asia, they are getting phones very early on, and they are their phones. It is not a shared device. So a bunch of people have these phones. They're always available. They're being trained on them, and the screen sizes have gotten much bigger. So again, you look at the early iPhone, you're looking at 3.5 inches. Like we've almost doubled screen size, and not only that, resolution has more than quadrupled. It's unbelievable, these technological advances. It just makes this so much more of a satisfying experience. So we didn't really need to change the UX, right? We didn't actually solve the problem of like, hey, you don't have those trigger buttons. Technology kind of took care of this problem for us, combined with the fact that mobile has just become this increasingly dominant platform. So people are just getting better. They've adapted to this style of control. All right, so here's what I'm going to leave my talk with. We're talking about the 5 parts of a game thesis. We talked about, what has the market told us? We have this idea of dual analog sticks. They've arrived in the West. It's not just confined to Asia anymore. People are being raised on these products. They've been successful. I think the next question you ask in terms of game thesis is like, what is the opportunity? Is it porting more HD experiences? Is it going back to GTA? Is it Game Pass coming onto mobile? Like we've seen that too. But what is the opportunity now that dual stick has arrived in the West? I'm going to leave that up to you guys to figure out. But I think there's some exciting opportunities there. I think there's a lot you can do with the fact that dual stick has arrived here. I think there's a lot of different design changes you can start to make. I think there's a lot of things that you can do the mobile formula that will, I think, bring more sophisticated experience to the West. But again, what is the opportunity? I'm going to leave that up to you guys. One last thing, I'll just say, again, introductions. I'm Phil Back. You can catch me on LinkedIn. I do consulting, Game Economist consulting. I'm on Twitter. God forbid if you're on Twitter as well, you can follow a Consifer. I also do a blog, gameeconomistconsulting.com, where I post some random ideas. I'm on a podcast called Game Economist Cast. That's my personal podcast. And I'm also on Deconstructors, This Week in Fun, or This Week in Games. That's a ton of fun as well. Hit me up, send me a LinkedIn message. I got a lot of content going on. I think there's some fun ideas out there that we need to talk about. Okay, that's all I got.
All right. Phillip, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for this. Wow. You know, wisdom has been spilled around this thing, around the first AMA session of Game Drive. Again, thank you so much to all of the speakers. Thank you, Dima. Thank you, Daria. Thank you, Phillip. These insights have been super great. I'm sure that the audience has enjoyed that, and they're already, you know, texting their friends and their colleagues at the other studios and just, you know, saying, guys, do not miss out the following sessions, whether online or offline, doesn't really matter. Okay, we are now open for the Q&A. So I'm gonna ask the questions from the audience, and this does not mean that you cannot steal. All right, useful and great presentation. Thank you. Yeah, this does not mean that you cannot still ask your questions. So please do that in the Q&A, chat, just a chat, whatever. And we're gonna start from the ones that have already been asked. So a couple of questions are dedicated to the, you know, to the organizational stuff of Game Drive, and hopefully Nick will answer those. So the first one is how to get a one-on-one session with the experts and how exactly it is designed.
Sure. Yeah, that's super easy, actually. So we have our website, gamedrive.com, and we have a very simple registration form where you can apply with your project. Well, actually, the more details you could add to this registration form, which includes the form for pitch deck submission, the better information and the more information we'll have to really evaluate the project. And the key, most promising one, selected projects will be passed on to this one-on-one sessions with experts. So basically, myself and our dear partners, Dima, Daria, Phillip, and others are reviewing the applications and selecting the ones who will proceed with expert reviews. The meetings are designed as private ones, and well, on such meetings we're asking questions to get some more details based on the information provided about the projects, and then yeah, we share our insights based on the market, based on, let's say, in our particular case with MY.GAMES, based on the metrics that we have at hand at our top projects to really compare, to suggest recommendations, and help with paths to improvement of products.
All right, thank you, Nick. Thank you so much. The next one is for Dima. Question to data.ai. One of the last webinars, one of your analysts told that customer spend is totally correlated with inflation, like bigger inflation leads to lower spend in the US, which makes sense. Is this trend strong enough in your opinion, and do the other markets have the same behavior? So Dima will hopefully answer that, and if anyone else of the experts, of the guests, wants to share their opinion, that would be most welcome as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to take this question. So we're correlating not inflation, but the disposable income available per country with the spend in games and apps. And as I presented today, I took not US, but US has a similar trend. I took Germany and France, just as an example of tier 1 European markets. And the correlation is as follows. So for games, it does correlate. So the dip in the disposable income has a dip in consumer spend for mobile games. But the thing is, and that's the interesting trend that Daria from Google also pointed out, is that it does not necessarily mean that the overall spend is dropping that much. And that said, people do continue to spend more on apps, on other ways of entertainment. So funny enough, like for some reason correlates strongly with the games drop, but not necessarily in the overall spend. So the overall wallet has shrunk a little bit. but disproportionately more for mobile games than it is for other ways of entertainment. Namely, one of the anecdotal examples is like TikTok and the volume of IAP spend that it generates. So I think it's strong enough, although the declining buying power is not consistent across the globe, as we all know, right? It's more of the case for Europe, especially the case for Eastern Europe, less so for the US, less so absolutely for the Middle East or Southeast Asia, which has absolutely different dynamics on the market. So I don't think we can extrapolate that globally, but it's strong enough for, I would say, tier one Western markets, especially European. So that's just my take on this. If others would like to comment, please.
Yeah, really. If anyone wants to add anything, please do. And I'm just gonna move on for the next question. So with the roguelite genre pretty much exploding with games like Archero and similar from the previous years, and especially Survivor.io and Vampire Survivors and others coming to mobile recently, how long do you think this hype cycle will last? Anyone, please.
Yeah, I could cover this one. So to start with, I do think it's not a hype. It's a trend, and the reason behind this trend, with Survivor.io, with Archer and other roguelite successful products, is that it's a perfect product for the current very competitive, very turbulent mobile market, because of one, to me, at least, right, key reason. It has very addictive, very engaging core gameplay, which is like super easy, pick up and play, but still challenging on the one hand. On the other hand, projects like this have very, very deep progression and monetization systems that both keep players engaged for like weeks and months, firstly, and secondly, they introduce lots of opportunities to like spend hundreds of bucks into this game and still be engaged, not be on the top. Still providing challenges in front of the players, even after like spending 100 bucks and more. So considering the challenges with IDFA depreciation that Daria has mentioned, and overall high competition for players' time and attention, such products with super flashy, clear, and engaging gameplay would work. And I believe this trend will be with us for quite a while. Phillip, what do you think?
That was
let me pass on this one only because I have some thoughts later on. I don't want to dominate the conversation.
Sure.
All right, thank you, Nick. Yeah, let's move on then. Dima, looks like this one's for you. Is there some data? I mean, pretty much any questions with the word data in it is automatically addressed to Dima today. Is there some data on what market share in downloads and spending are distributed between portrait and landscape-oriented games? But again, anyone else can join in as well.
Yeah, sure enough, we have some data on that. So when it comes to breakdown in downloads and consumer spend, like so spend is almost like 2/3 landscape versus 1/3 portrait, and downloads is 44% landscape, like 55 portrait. And funny enough, like just to follow up on the previous popularity of Survivor.io or Archero or like Mighty Doom recently, I mean, they're all vertical, but they're all built natively like for mobile gameplay. And I think that's just a phenomenon. And so to Philip's point, like people are getting accustomed to having dual stick and this kind of landscape gaming experience with the HD games, just one that drives the thing. But also when it comes to kind of a mobile native, like one hand short playing cycles experience like Archero or Mighty Doom or Survivor, I think there's been significant progress recently, especially with the success of Survivor.io, which has been a long time in the making, like soft launching and optimizing the monetization. But then when they nailed it, and they scaled like massively. And I think that's a huge success that we all observed last year. And I think that's that trend will persist in my perspective. And landscape versus portrait, I think it's like it's a very simple question, but it's not that simple. Like I wouldn't drive any conclusions just by breaking down the the portrait versus landscape, because there's so many inputs to that that requires some analysis just to answer that question. I think Phillip has more thoughts on this, I would imagine.
Just 2 cents from my side. I believe it really depends on specific genre that, well, one considers to enter with a new product when considering portrait or vertical orientation of the screen. So it's use cases, it's overall control schema, and it's patterns within the genre. Those factors are really important to decide on.
I'm super keen to also know what the empiricism of this question is. Like the thing I keep going back to with a lot of clients I work for is if you're building like this really mobile native game, people naturally hold the phone in portrait. And when you think about like the difference between holding a phone in portrait versus holding a phone in landscape, like what that tax is if you put your game into landscape, it's unbelievable. Like think about how many times you're gonna take your phone out of your pocket and have to rotate it to play the game over the course of a game's life. So you're thinking about, okay, a player may, let's say, take out their phone and play the game 10 times. Like that wouldn't be uncommon during the day. They're mostly going to take it out of their pocket. And how do you store your phone in your pocket? Because I can guarantee you no one's storing their phone in their pocket in landscape. They're storing their phone in their pocket in portrait. And so you're taking your phone out and you're going to have to rotate that phone 10 times a day. And not only that, multiply that by how many sessions that you're going to have over the course of the year. So we're talking about like hundreds of thousands of times an individual player is going to have to rotate that phone. Not only that, if they are going to switch to that game, they're going to switch from that game from being in a portrait mode to having to go into landscape. So there's like this insane tax you got to think about when you're putting your game into landscape. And so the counter argument I would put forward here is that it really comes down to like the type of session that you're having, right? So we were talking about the idea that there's definitely a segment of players that are sitting down and they're spending like 30 minutes an hour playing mobile games. Like that's what they do when they go home. They don't have consoles anymore. This is the device they're being raised on. And when you're in that kind of long session time experience when you're at home, well then that tax has kind of like been evaporated, right? So I would argue that perhaps there's a barbell effect here, right? Where if you're playing games rather rapidly, if it's a match 3 game, of course that you want to be portrait. If you're hyper casual, I would guarantee you that hyper casual games are, what are they, 100% portrait? I mean, I can't think of a single hyper casual game that's landscape. Because you have quick session times, you want to get people in and out very quickly. But when you think about those longer session experiences, they're almost all landscapes. You think about MOBAs, you think about Honor of Kings. Those are all landscape games. You think about the Roblox experiences we're talking about, all of those are landscape. All the dual stick shooters, they have to be landscape because you got to put both thumbs on a screen. It's just more natural to do it. So anyway, super interesting question. I would think really a lot about the tax. And I would bet there's that barbell effect empirically.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Or we can move on. I'm still seeing questions. That's yeah. Thank you guys so much. We have questions coming up. So once again, do not hesitate. The questions are really great, and the answers and the insights are awesome as well. All right. As the tradition goes, Dima will probably start answering this one. How emerging markets like LATAM, MENA, Southeast Asia look like in terms of the market share of mobile?
I think with that, we can get back to the presentation that we've seen earlier. So there's an actual slide breaks down the market share. Observations that I can share for some of the regions that mentioned, like MENA, for example. I think it's just, again, a lack of focus on the region limits the growth. For example, right now, Saudi is pretty much close consumer spend as Brazil. Whilst in Saudi, there are like, 40 million people versus 200 something Brazil. So it's just not all publishers culturize, localize, and pay attention to build games for certain regions, but the spend potential is significant. So we have slides earlier today on both per device consumer spend and the market share. in different regions. So you can definitely investigate that. And from the growth perspective, there's definitely pockets of growth outside the countries that we're all like obsessed on, like US. And it's just a matter of maybe having a closer look to it, what kind of game people play, because there are some developers that are built natively for those markets, like Yalla Games or others. But does that make a case for all of us? Not necessarily. Southeast Asia is completely different story because of the distribution is, you know, on the different magnitude compared to markets like Middle East, but the buying power isn't that strong still. So yeah, I think there's more to discuss, and we have, I think if you watch the recording from this presentation, you find some insights regarding the breakdown and the market potential as it is right now.
Sure. That's a good moment to remind you guys that all the videos will be available on the Game Drive website. So even if you miss something, you can always get back to and rewatch that. So yeah, if anyone else wants to join in on this particular question, you can do this right now, or we move on to the next one. And I'll just have to mention that I know we're a little bit out of time already, but this is how it goes at Game Drive sessions. I mean, the insights are so good that you can just not stop anyone from talking. Yeah. Which niches are the most promising for the new developers with limited budgets? I mean, we could dedicate the whole session to this kind of question, but I mean, Phillip, you look like a person who wants to answer this particular one.
So I'm gonna show the thesis again. I'm gonna show the thesis. I'm gonna argue there's two parts of this thesis that I think you can use to help answer this question. One I would argue is we were talking about content supply chains. So you really have to think about your content supply chains if you have limited resources. So what are games that have reduced content supply chains? Wordle, great game, very limited content supply chain, right? There isn't a whole lot you have to do if you are the developer of New York Times. You basically need a writer to be able to produce this. Stay away from Match 3. Match 3, very expensive. So really think about what are those content supply chains that in terms of the genre that you're going after, and you know, what is your core loop. I also think there's things like extraction shooters, right? Extraction shooters really rely on consumables. Once you make some consumables, players continue to generate resources. They lose them, they continue to generate resources again. That's zero marginal cost for you, a developer. That is not new content, that you're just producing the same resource over and over again. Same thing we saw in Clash of Clans, right? Those troops are consumables. Not only that, you get infinite spend depth, right? You can just, you know, continue to spend money into those speeders. But then I would argue the second part of the thesis you can use to answer this is, what has the market told us? And I would argue that there is a segment of gamers that are not being served right now, which is older gamers. 40 plus people. Think about Garden Joy, which came out from Scopely. It is a game that no one is covering, and no one is covering it because no one actually is a part of that target demo. And we have this insane bias towards only covering games that we tend to play. It is a game where you garden. The 40 plus demo is a huge group of spenders that no one is going after right now. So I would argue like that 40 plus demo, no one's going after them. Who's doing gardening games? No one's doing gardening games. And I'll also argue that women continue to be underserved in this market. They've kind of been pinned as, oh, they're just into match 3. I think that's ridiculous. There's so many more needs that female gamers have that no one is serving. And so there's a company called Superbloom. I would highly recommend checking them out. But I think there's much deeper social experiences that we can provide to female gamers, which again are 50% of the market. So again, you have to get outside your own bias. Think about older gamers. Think about the things that no one is talking about, right? Those are going to be your wins. And then think about the supply chain. So how do I take this genre? How do I reduce the supply chains? How do I perhaps introduce consumables? I think if you go back to like, what has the market told us? And what are your main content pipelines? Just hammer on those things. I think if you combine those two things together, you're going to get interesting results. But again, I would argue like female gamers, I think they're totally being underserved. I think there's way more needs that you can meet there. I think older gamers, no one is talking about them. Wordle is enormously successful. It's 40 plus people on the New York Times. They have a whole games division now. There's no reason that people can't compete with them.
Yeah, I wanted to add a few points to Phillip's brilliant answer, in my view. So when considering which genre to tackle, please consider your strengths and weaknesses as a development team from the standpoint of tech. from the standpoint of art and other perspectives. Yeah, being quite specific, I would recommend looking into roguelite and idle tycoon genres, because considering some other quite successful genres from the volume of installs and market share perspective, where the quality bar is very, very high, as well as overall the dominance of the key titles. If we get back to idle tycoons, let's say, or idlers, right, the quality bar is much lower, and it does not cost so much, time and resources to deliver the new game, solid game, which could be competitive to the market and become prominently successful.
Nice. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for your answers. And I'm just reading the comments and the questions, and I'm so happy to see that people, not only me, but other people, consider all of this insightful and helpful and useful. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions, unfortunately, but we're already running out of time. So I'm just going to go on with the first one. How are Chinese games doing in the West? Dima, you know who's going to answer that.
Absolutely. There are 2 perspectives for this question. So one is from the publisher side. So Chinese HQ publishers are pretty much eating the world. So basically 1/3 of the consumer spend is coming from like Chinese HQ publishers. We're not even counting the third-party Android stores in China. That's just a black box that we're not talking about. That's one. And then if we're talking from the setting perspective, like the ones that have, for example, anime or like Eastern type of setting inside the game, how do those feel in the Western markets? They feel pretty well. Although last year, the trend is the same across pretty much all the consumer spend in mobile games. So in the Western markets, there's been a huge drop by the titles like Pokemon Go, and all in all, we see all those like Eastern style games in the West are like 15-20% drop year over year, 2022 versus previous year. So they're not earning that much, but they're still somewhat popular, although naturally they're being consumed more within the domestic markets. So yeah, that's the overall observation. So I think from there there are opposite trends when we are looking at different markets, because for example in South Korea the same Pokemon Go might actually grow last year, whilst in the US is dropping significantly. So I mean the trend is not even across even the domestic markets where you expect the consumption of such games, but for the West it's pretty much stable with a bit of a drop in the last year. So that's how demand looks like.
Right. Thank you, Dima, so much. So happy that you're here today. I mean, pretty much every question starts with you and data. All right, we have a final one. So we had 2 different takes for today. So we had 2 different takes on the market focus from Daria and Dima. The first take, just to remind you guys, is that the US is still the biggest market and doesn't give up its positions in terms of revenues. And the second take is that Asia is obviously growing. I would not personally say these are 2 different takes, but you know, as long as we're asking questions. So can you guys elaborate on how a Western developer should think about targeting our games in terms of Asia and the West? Is the targeting even manageable after the game has been developed past the prototype stage? Since obviously the gameplay is already set. So Daria, hopefully you will answer this one. And if anyone else, again, from the experts, from the speakers wants to join, please do.
Sure. So the first thing which is vital about Asia is that you need to think of the genre of your game and to check whether this genre is popular within the country you are thinking of, because lots of different Asian markets are not the same even within the Asia. For example, if you're having a casino, you will have success within South Korea because there are lots of in-app revenue and downloads at the moment. But at the same time, there is no popularity of the genre within Japan, and you can't really go with this type of project to all the Asian countries. This is the first thing. The second thing is the opportunities for monetization, because there are different types of how you can bring money from purchases or from ads. And for example, for India, the most popular thing how you earn money is showing ads, but not to be honest, this is also something that is changing, and we also see this in-app revenue growth within India as well. But at the same time, for example, Indian users on average are okay with 5 ads one by one in a game versus, for example, for US, if I remember this right, for only 1 ad at the moment. So this is also the different, very big difference with Western countries as well. And also in-app revenues are also different within countries from the perspective of the exact price, because sometimes it works with 1.99 price for dollars for something. Then in other countries it works with 1.8 dollars per something. So this is also the pricing within in-apps. You also need to think about this. And as for the prototypes and with the game itself, I guess it's better to find an expert from the market you're interested in and just have this consultation on your UI and UX within your game, because we definitely see that audiences within different Asian markets are very different. Starting from, I don't know, popularity of Android in South Korea versus the biggest popularity within Asia in iOS for Japan. This is also different, and this is also different platforms in terms of UI as well. So yeah, lots of things you need to consider. These markets also differ in the splits of ages, genders, and you also need to focus on this while targeting all these different markets.
Thank you, Daria. Thank you.
Well, yeah, based on my understanding of the question, folks are already having a game in development and past prototyping stage, and they have Western mindset, and it looks like they're going for a Western audience, being US and Western markets, obviously, right? So in this case, I would recommend to keep pushing and deliver the game to Western audience first, get some traction, and then consider adapting the games through live ops, through specific marketing approaches to Asian markets, because just like Daria has mentioned, Asian markets, Asian audience is quite different compared to Western one. Therefore, it requires specific and different approach, at least to presenting the game and operating the game, if it gets traction in Asia overall. So perfect example in my view is THESIS Knives Out, one of the early battle royale shooters that get their trace from 2018, as far as I remind. They've been very successful in Japan specifically, making like tons of money exactly from Japanese market, and all of that thanks to live ops and special marketing approach that they've taken to Japanese market with this game, even though it was not designed for Japan specifically at the very beginning.
Nice. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Daria. This has been amazing. Unfortunately, guys, we have to wrap up. A couple of more words. Thank you again so much to all of you, to the experts, to the team, to the viewers. to all who took part in today's Ask Me Anything session. I remind you that this has been the first session in the third season of Game Drive, the first online session, and we're also heading for the first offline session. Again, special thank you to our speakers. I believe that this has been very useful and very insightful, and from what I see, from what we see from the comments, this has been very insightful for you as well. So our next online Ask Me Anything session will be held on the 15th of June, in pretty much a month, a little bit more than a month, at exactly the same time, 3 p.m. Central European time. So please mark your calendars. Do not miss this. We're going to talk about live ops and player engagement, a very useful and a very helpful topic. So please register on the Game Drive website. You have already understood that this is the direct destination for everything, everything's Game Drive. So do not hesitate to tell your friends, to tell your colleagues as well. And before we end our session today, let me remind you about the offline event on the 23rd of May during the Nordic Game Conference at the beautiful city of Malmö. Again, register at the Game Drive website. Lots of the people and lots of the speakers that you have seen today will be there as well. Definitely Nick, definitely Phillip Black, that I know for sure. So do not miss an opportunity to meet these our experts, these amazing people in person. And as has been mentioned earlier, get a chance on a one-on-one feedback session. Yeah. So if you're a mobile game developer who has already a project published on Google Play and you're looking for support, consulting, investment, please submit your game on the you-know-what website and receive a comprehensive scope of expert valuation and, again, hopefully for all of us, investment. Thank you guys again so much. Have a nice rest of the day, of the night, whatever it is at your time zone. And see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.